We are very excited that you found the courage to leave your house wearing those protective shields and come to participate in this most amazing event ever created in the history of histories since the world created the cyber crisis management event. Before we will start, and before I will explain exactly what we're going to do here today, I want to call a special guest to the stage, Major General Professor Itzik Ben Israel. He is the head of the ICRC who organizes this entire Cyber Week. Itzik, the stage is yours.
Only a few welcome words. You don't know how happy I am to see you face in face. I mean, after a year or even half of seeing images, and you can never tell, I mean, what they are really doing now, besides being seen on the screen. It's encouraging to see people coming in person, starting to discuss again important issues, and this time it's, of course, cybersecurity. We started, I think the first conference we did was 2010. 2010, only the last year, 2020, was online because of the corona, and today it's hybrid. But we hope that next year it will be fully, again, in-person conference. And I say only two or three sentences. I mean, even me, who had the honor to submit to the government almost 11 years ago, a plan how to make this technology, which was born in security and intelligence services, how to make this technology a kind of motto for the growth of the economy, not only improving security. Even I didn't believe, I mean, what 10 years later, today, what will be the numbers? And I just read the updated numbers. Not only in, startups and things that we are doing well for 20 or 30 years now, but even in terms of unicorns, that is companies that have the worth of more than $1 billion per company, it happens that 1/3, 33% of the cyber unicorns globally are Israeli, even in unicorns. Not to speak about the huge investment here in Israel. If we look at the business sector investment in cybersecurity, excluding government money, and you look at the whole global investment and ask yourself where it goes to, almost half of it comes to Israel. Last year, I mean, the first half of 2021, it was 45%. The year before, it was 33%. The year before, 26%. It's keep going. More in absolute terms, more money then goes to the USA, which is something, I mean, you have to look at the numbers again and again and again until you are convinced that they are true. I hope that tomorrow, by the way, we open it formally, and then on the next day, this is issues with government. The next day we will have the Prime Minister open it. On the second day of it, and I hope to see you all here, and of course coming next year as usual. I would handle the microphone back to Menny, who is also the CTO of our research center. Menny, please.
So the Cyber Week, you're already familiar with the Cyber Week because you're here. One of the most important conferences outside the United States. Before the COVID-19, we had people from over 90 countries arriving at Israel to participate in 50 events at the Cyber Week. And that was amazing. The ability to do that was amazing. But the fact that we are able to do this event, which is much smaller, is much more amazing to me. And it's all thanks to you guys who have come here and participated in this event. So thank you for coming. I'm going to tell you 3 secrets, 3 well-known secrets about cybersecurity. Things that you already know. I'm not going to say anything, I hope, new. Secret number 1. It can happen to everyone. It is obvious. In the past year or so, 2 years, we had some of the biggest cybersecurity vendors in the world being hacked. The leaders of cybersecurity were hacked, and if it can happen to them, it is obvious that it can happen to everyone. It is actually very, very hard to try and find big, known company that didn't experience a major cyber incident. And let me tell you something, as a person who is involved in a company that does cyber crisis management, most of those incidents don't even reach the newsletter. So if the company is not obligated to notify the public about the incident, it will not reach the newsletter. This is why you must always assume that the list of hacked companies is much larger than the known list of hacked companies. A company is in one of 2 stages. Either the company is before getting hacked or during getting hacked. A well-known secret number 2. The direct effects of an incident, like downtime of systems, the ransomware you pay, those kind of things, are much smaller than the indirect effects. And the indirect effects include something like fines by the regulators, people suing you, your customers sue you, your shareholders sue you, your partners sue you. The fact that you have to change the focus of the company. You cancel major projects. You have to invest much more in cybersecurity. You spend a lot of time managing the investigation by regulators and so many other things. So the indirect damages are much, much greater. When you understand that this is a multidisciplinary problem. Sometimes people still think that when you have a cyber incident, you just throw it on the technical people and they will solve that. But when you understand that the indirect damages are the major driver for damages inside the organization, you understand that you have to manage this incident in many, many fronts. The legal, the PR, the HR, the insurance, the working with the police, working with other entities, and so many other things. This is a multidisciplinary problem which requires a multidisciplinary system. And when you understand that, you also understand that this is a board game. It's not the technical people that need to deal with the cyber crisis. It's the board of management, it's the senior management of the organization where they have to take all of those decisions. This is why we brought so many amazing speakers today. And those speakers, not all of them are hackers, not all of them are super hands-on technical. Some of them are experts in different fields related to cybersecurity, PR experts, law experts, negotiation experts, cryptocurrency experts. And together they represent the multidisciplinary approach for cyber crisis management. And how this is going to work. So we have 3 main panels, which are not going to be exactly panels. Those are going to be mini simulation games. My good friend, Dr. Nimrod Kozlovski, created this concept where you play a simulation on the stage with participants. So you will see that. I don't want to explain what it is. You will see that. And in between those panels, we're going to have speakers that will speak for 10 minutes each. It's going to be 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, I'm coming here whether you finished or not. You just have to know that. Well-known secret number 3, and I will finish with that, being ready makes a difference. We saw many, many companies getting hacked. There is a huge difference between those companies who were prepared to deal with the crisis and those who weren't. This is why this event is so important. It is part of being ready. Our aim is to share as much knowledge as possible about crisis management. And we brought different actors, competitors, people who compete on the same market, but which are willing to work together, which are good friends, in order to create these amazing sessions aimed at sharing as much knowledge as possible for the people who are here and people who are watching us live. So, with this, let the game begin. I want to call to the stage my good friend, one of the most brilliant people on earth, Mr. Dr. Superstar Nimrod Kozlovski. Please, the stage is yours.
So let's start. This is the panel of experts I have. See how beautiful they are. You haven't started to see how smart they are. And each one represents different aspects of cyber crisis management. We'll deal with this together. Let me start with the story, the background. Well, it's not so important. We need to understand a little bit about the victim company and the industry. The company that was attacked, called First American Corporate, it's actually the second largest insurance company in the US on a segment, on a niche insurance market called title insurance. Don't need to understand too much, but what there is to understand, in any real estate transaction in the US, you are concerned that you'll have any risk associated with the title, that someone would claim that it's their own property. There'll be some damages unknown in the title. So therefore, in any transaction in the US, there is a title insurance. Basically insure you against the risk that someone would have a claim for this title, or the title would prove to be unworthy what you've paid in the transaction. So there are insurance companies that insuring this kind of risk. As it states here, insurance company insure the interest of the owner or lender against defects in the title. This is the second largest company in the market, $6.5 billion of revenues just from title insurance, 21% of the American market. But you have to understand, when you are an insurance title company, you have a lot of records. Just to try to understand what kind of data they need to process in any insurance claim. In order to understand whether they provide insurance, they need from the applicant applications, financial statements, settlements they have. They need from lawyers, real estate agents, escrow, to provide all information that's related to the deal to be able to assess whether to provide insurance title or not. You need proprietary databases like credit reports, appraisals, escrow balance, a lot of information. So it wouldn't be a surprise for you that this company has 850 million records. Meaning from the titles they deal with, some tens of millions of assets in the US, they accumulated 850 million records. You wouldn't be surprised, given the kind of sensitive records that they hold, that the company in their privacy policy or in their legal terms make it to be their claim. They say, and you would not read it, as no one reads privacy policies, but in the privacy and security commitment, they say to you, we take your privacy as our first priority. We understand you care about privacy and security, given the sensitivity of records. Therefore, we assure you, we have access control, transaction-based privacy, meaning no one can access a transaction they are not part of. We're holding a vault, meaning for every transaction there'll be a secured vault with the highest protection mechanism of security to make sure that only parties to this transaction can have access to the vault and get access to the information. That's all their promises. And let's the game start. I don't know if you are familiar with Brian Kerbs. Maybe Karen will tell us a little bit about him, given that Karen was 14 years BBC investigative reporter. But on the 24th of May, 2019, Brian Kerbs in Twitter, not in a news format, in Twitter he says, probably I've just ruined a lot of Memorial Day vacation plans. You understand what will be the impact of what he's going to say. Truly massive, possibly superlative, sensitive data exposure, more soon. It's Brian Kerb, and he's announcing that he's going to make a big security news soon, and he's going to ruin the weekend. What's this news were about, before we say how we address it? He's actually telling that he got a tip from some real estate agent that apparently there is a security vulnerability in this insurance company. You wouldn't believe how simple this security vulnerability is. Apparently, when you have a transaction and you send the link to the vault, there is a link. The link is compromised of actually the asset number, meaning the title. And then you can get access to the vault. Apparently, if you just change the numbers in the link to another asset, you can get access to another vault. And not only that, apparently if you change or manipulate the numbers, you just know the number of different transactions, you get access to the vault without any need to authenticate yourself or provide any logging information. And these links do not expire, meaning essentially you can get access. So he notified the company, apparently you had this kind of like link problem, which is a vulnerability. Karen, you work for First American Corp, and you see this tweet, and you get a call from independent journalist Brian Kerb. How would you react?
First, I would investigate what exactly this reporter is all about. Brian Kerb, just to give you a little bit of background, he's a security expert, but he hasn't started as a security expert. He's a Washington Post reporter of 18 years. I happen to speak to him probably once a quarter. He definitely knows everything that he needs to know. But he's also open for negotiation. So the first and foremost, and this is where a lot of companies fail, is you don't, let's say this, you don't seem like you're caught by surprise. You're supposed to answer him very calmly and engage and create a dialogue.
Karen, you have no idea what the vulnerability is talking about. Mm-hmm. And he's saying, I'm going to publish this report about your company. You'll be at the center of a cyber catastrophe. How would you react? It's an independent journalist. He says there's a vulnerability. You have no idea about it. How would you react as a media expert?
First and foremost, ask him, can you tell me a little bit more about the story? Okay, can we discuss it over coffee? Can we talk off the record just for background? It's the same as always. And he will definitely do it because he will want to get it right. A lot of companies, what happens is they think that the story is already there and he has the story, he has the headline, and there's nothing we can do about it. But really, they don't. As a former investigative reporter, I can tell you that that moment of answering the phone call from me or answering my tweet or whatever is the money time, a moment. If I sense, like, and every journalist in the world has those instincts, if I sense that there's more to dig, that there's further to dig, I will dig. So,
Karen, let me tell you what happened with this company. We'll have to be short with the answers because we have many answers, many experts, but let me tell you what happened with this company. They got this call from Brian Kerb, who is saying, I found a vulnerability, and the company kind of like did not feel the need to answer for 2 days. They believe, you know, many journalists call us with some reports, vulnerabilities. We're being approached by so many ethical hackers, wannabe journalists, and for 2 days do not answer.
True. They actually didn't answer for 56 hours. I checked it before coming here. And just FYI. And then one more thing is that Ben Chauvel, that developer that spoke to him, also contacted a First American, and they haven't answered him for 4 months. Okay,
so we have a story.
This is a key thing.
We have a story for 4 months that the company does not answer someone who is saying, you do have a vulnerability, ethically calling them a real estate agent, you have a vulnerability, they do not check it, and when they're approached by the journalist for 56 hours, they do not answer. Now it comes to the company is about to publish the story. It tells them that's a story, that's the vulnerability you have. Your link can be easily manipulated or changed to get to any transaction. You bring it to Dan, and Dan is actually acting as part of the management in this company. He's in the C-level of the company. He's not a technical expert, but you are being approached with this story. And you are told by the media expert that there's a journalist, he asked for an answer for the company. What would you do?
Freak out. No, but more seriously, first I hope that at this point, I'm not new in the company and I understand the culture of this company and understand what I know and what I do not know. And that's really important. If you're an executive in a company, you really need to know what you know and what you don't know. And you take a step back and then say, okay, who do I need? who do I need? I need obviously my PR expert, I need my CFO, I need my IT team, and I need to understand what the hell is going on. Okay, so you organize this sub-management committee, even bring all your management committee in, and try to figure out what is going on, and that would be my first step.
But then,
gather information.
But you know that banks, insurance companies, financial institutions get approached quite frequently, let's say once a week by journalists, or once a week by some kind of ethical hacker that approaches them and says, hey, I have a story for you. Would you seriously, every time you get approached that there is some vulnerability, establish this kind of committee, have a full research? Let's be honest about practice.
No, that's a great point. I think it all depends on a few things. One is the credibility of the one who approached you. When it's a former Washington Post journalist, then you gather everything you have.
So let me tell you what happens in this company. In this company, the first American corp, the CEO decides to consult with the PR experts, and they say, okay, we are being approached by reporters all the time. What's important for us is to convey the message that we care about security, that we mean security. Doesn't matter what the vulnerability is. We have many vulnerabilities, and actually they asked the security team, could you, in a way, shut down this kind of like direct link so we don't have this vulnerability anymore? And the security team says, sure, we can shut down the link. By the way, Guy, how is it to solve such a problem that you had a link, which is a broken link that you can connect to personal data?
So there are two different aspects here. The first one is to understand how to remediate the problem. From the records, we know that they understood the problem well. The security team has announced that there is a significant issue. It was misreported inside the company as a low severity, even though it was higher than that. And they had discussions with the development team on how to fix it, which they didn't.
But Guy, before we get to this, and we'll get to this in the case, I'm just asking you, the CEO tells you, hey, we were reported a vulnerability that we have links that go directly to the vaults regardless of the transaction. Do you have a way to solve it for me?
There's also always a way to solve something. But the problem is that you don't always solve it all the way. So it's very easy to fix these kinds of vulnerabilities. You spend, 1 man week, 2 man weeks and fix the vulnerability. But then you discover that it was just the tip of the iceberg.
Okay.
So you don't really solve everything at once.
So this company decided that it's an easy solve. They asked the kind of like the technical team, and the technical team say, hey, given that it's just a link that connects directly to the vault, let's have what they called gateway to every vault. And in this gateway, you need to log in and provide a password. So always the link would go through this kind of like identification mechanism, and here's solved. Because in this gateway, you'll have to provide your credentials and we'll be able to confirm that you have access. And they say solved. Is it really solved by that?
No, not really. The fix is not fully solving the problem, because even if you are an authenticated user, you can still do what is called link enumeration. You can just replace the ID again and again and again, but now you're authenticated where before you didn't need to be.
Okay. So basically we understand that even if you had some kind of authentication, and by the way, that was the case, you can bypass authentication and get access to identified session. But here, Dan, it gets back to your table as the management of the company, and you're being told by your technical team, we solved it. We had a vulnerability. We have many vulnerabilities. Each organization has vulnerabilities. We solved it. It's no longer a problem. So you have on your desk the following information. It's a serious journalist. He wants a reply from us. We already solved the vulnerability that he reported about, and it's no longer a problem for our customers. How would you address the kind of like this news article or the statement provided by the company?
Well, there is a serious management issue here, because the question wasn't the right question. The question shouldn't be, can you fix it to me? The question should be, tell me more about the problem first. And that hopefully will bring you more information that will help you make the decision. Because if you, in old school, we used to tell people that work for us, I don't care, just solve the problem for me. It doesn't work like that anymore in management. If you just give your executives an order, just fix it, I don't want to know about it, I don't want to hear about it, that's not going to do it anymore. Actually, sometimes it brings you to the criminal area of law, which is unpleasant, to say the least.
Okay, so here in this case, the company decides that we're just going with a kind of like positive PR. They are being consulted by the PR expert, which says, take this case as an opportunity. Demonstrate to your customers that you care about them, and they provide this kind of answer. First American has learned about the design defect in an application that made possible unauthorized access to customer data, and now, as First American, we care foremost about security, privacy, confidentiality. Be sure that, we protect you here, we care about you. If there's any more information, we'll report to you. And we solved it. What do you think about this statement, Karen?
I'll start with a little just before, because before the statement, there's multiple stages that have not been addressed by First American. And I think that first and foremost, it's very clear that they don't have a well-established crisis management process in place. They actually freaked out, and they didn't have like a person to provide background briefing, as well as a spokesperson, a face and a name in front of the press, basically. So for the statement, I would say they've made every mistake possible to make, because what you want to do with a statement is first and foremost reassure the audience that are listening that this is being taken care of. Don't downplay it if it's clear that this is a big story. So they basically said, if I would see it, I would say, okay, they're trying to shut down the story, and I would dig further as an investigative reporter, because I understand that what they're trying to say, okay, don't bother us until we have this third-party audit, because we ourselves don't know what happened.
Ran, now it gets to you, and you are the company lawyer. And given you're a company lawyer, and it's a publicly traded company in the insurance market, they get to you and says, hey, there's a story, it's now heard a story, we gave the statement that we solved the problem, they provide to you the information, problem solved. There was a vulnerability, we have no cyber incident, it's just a vulnerability, it's solved. We have no more a problem, and we provided a statement to the journalist, so it's out there, but we assume it's managed, the damage. How would you recommend them about immediate reports or any kind of disclosure, given that it's a public company?
First of all, I think one of the main issues is that they only come to me now, and that's our life stories as lawyers. They only come to us last. And if you remember Dan's answer, who would you call? He said the IT guy, the PR guy. He didn't mention a lawyer. And there's... Yeah, because he always has a lawyer. He has the faculty next to him here. And one of the reason to involve a lawyer from the start of the crisis is not because we like to be involved. We are too busy. Don't involve us if you don't have to. But I think that, making a public statement when you're a public company without consulting a lawyer, first of all, is a very dangerous practice anyway. In this regard, it's also more dangerous because I would have asked them, guys, it's nice that you solved it. Do you know where you reported when the incident happens? When did the company know when the incident happens? Why didn't you report it to start with? What's the real story? What's the vulnerability? What information was lost? We cannot just make public statements and then need to follow them to the security authority.
Who would you ask to provide you information, given that you as a lawyer need now to draft a statement to the market?
So clearly I work closely with top management that are responsible for reporting, but I would expect them to have established in place procedures where they get information from the technical team, and for procedures for junior technical team up the stream to the more senior technical team to be apprised of any vulnerabilities on real time,
so
rather than...
You may be a little bit surprised, but the company decided to issue what we call 8K. 8K, it's immediate report. They assume that it's substantial, so they need to inform the market. But in the notification to the market, they just say that, we had a defect design, this vulnerability. We fixed it. It's solved. There's no longer an issue. We take pride in our privacy and security and confidentiality. We care about our clients. But if there'll be any damage, we'll get back to you and report to you more about it, but you have no reason to worry, because we take care of it. That's the way that they report issues solved. Apparently, they consulted none from the technical team. CISO was not involved as part of the reporting, and the company was not informed about the damage. but see what happens just about a little bit about later. They realize, as they start being investigated, that apparently in the vulnerability management, risk management platform that they have, apparently 5 months earlier, it was reported, this vulnerability, and this vulnerability was downgraded from high risk to a medium risk, which means that in 90 days they need to do something about it, but it was not reported to anyone in the organization beside the technical team. What do you have to say about it, Nitzan?
First of all, I would like to say that the vulnerability management is all theory. It's not something simple. That related to your statement of the event and proactive active, and you will take this stage. The main goal of the vulnerability management process is to quickly identify and repair vulnerabilities, perform scans, and defense and implement the correction actions. I think that the company must adopt a multi-layers approach to vulnerability management, and of my side, it includes something like 6 actions. The first one is...
We don't have time for that. We'll cover later. But you're saying vulnerability report management need to actually have multi-layers, being to report or kind of like to record this. But how about whether you do anything in reporting this risk up the ladder for the management or someone that understands the risk that you have in your system? Is there any reporting mechanisms or any controls to make sure that someone up the ladder understands about the risk?
I think that when presenting it, it is very important to explain cybersecurity matters in a way that both make sense and benefit to the board. And board have the keys and the role to play in ensuring an effective cyber strategy in place. I think that by asking the right questions about cyber risks, they can help dramatically to minimize the financial and the reputational impact of a successful attack.
Guy, here a question. You were involved in many companies with the vulnerability management platforms. How often do you see a company actually report up the ladder from just a vulnerability report?
So usually in vulnerability management programs, there are a couple of different players. There's the person or persons who found the vulnerability, and they have one way to describe it, one set of language. There's the vulnerability research people, the security team inside the company, who are using different scales and different metrics to assess a vulnerability. And there are the technical people who actually need to solve a vulnerability, the development team, that they also need to understand the scope and the risk for a specific vulnerability. Each speaking its own language, each using its own terms, and they often don't communicate with each other. This is the most often case.
Dan, what's the mechanism in a company to make sure that you have some reporting that the management understand what the risk aspects of the vulnerability that is known now to the technical team?
Well, so it's complicated, right? So there are issues of false positive and false negatives here. And first you need a system of internal controls, obviously, where high vulnerabilities are getting reported. But I think the issue here is not the fact that they actually had a vulnerability, right? That's every firm has a vulnerability at a certain point. The problem is when they reported or when they approached this whole crisis, it was a crisis management problem and not a cyber problem. If they had asked the question when when the vulnerability was discovered or when they had to report, there was no issue, right? The fact that the SEC went after them, the SEC didn't go after them because they had a vulnerability. The SEC go after them because they failed the internal controls when they reported. That's the issue.
Maybe that brings us to we're just to wrap up soon, but just interesting, we don't have enough time to cover it, but what's interesting, that was the first case that actually the financial regulator in New York decided to take publicly to action, and it's going to be a public trial on August. Actually saying, as you can see, he said, it's not a problem that you had a vulnerability, that's okay. It doesn't a problem that your vulnerability was exploited. The problem that you set your own policies and procedure, but you didn't follow them. The problem is that you have no mechanism to make sure that the technical team does not cover up and actually report up the ladder to the management to understand the importance of it. Nitzan, what's the mechanism to make sure that the management is well informed of vulnerabilities in the organization?
I think that the best mechanism is you ask from a technical standpoint?
No, from policy. What's the mechanism to make sure that management is well aware of the risks that you have in the organization? That they understand what the technical reports are saying and what does it mean for them?
I think that the main information you need to give to the board, it's about the metrics that you make from the KPIs that you make as a technical KPIs, and the main issue is that the time is short. The faster you can detect the risk, and the more rapidly you can mitigate the risk.
Thanks. I'm sorry that we'll have to wrap up, but we'll wrap up with the last aspects of this. By the way, this company is sued now in multiplied cases. They have class action, derivative action against them. There are many actions against the directors, but another action which is interesting is from the SEC, and that's to you, Ran. The SEC is actually coming back to the company and says, you failed in your immediate report, given that you reported when the relevant information was not in front of those responsible for the reporting. He said when the company decided how to issue the report to the market, they did not consult with the technical team. Those who reported were not familiar with the fact that for 5 months the organization knows about it and didn't do anything to mitigate the damage. What do we have to learn from this about kind of like reporting and the way we need to report cyber vulnerabilities, and what's the right mechanism?
Yeah, I think it touched bases with what we discussed before. You have to have repeated reporting procedures in place to make sure that the technical people, like in any other, by the way, division in the company, not only the tech and not only the cyber, but you need to have these procedures in place. You have to have not only to follow your procedures, which this company haven't done, but report of any malfunction or vulnerability on time and quickly, so that the parties responsible for reporting will have the real picture. Otherwise, this report, even if it hasn't been done deliberately because they were wrong, is misleading, and it will have consequences.
I think what we can take from this, every company has vulnerabilities. By the way, in the recent filing against the company, it was found that they had 230,000 vulnerabilities. They didn't, 600 vulnerabilities they did not mitigate. There are many vulnerabilities. The problem is not about vulnerabilities. The problem is about how to have a procedure for vulnerability management, how to report well the risk up the ladder, how to make sure that once you have an incident, you investigate the incident seriously to understand whether it was exploited, and how you deal with the media and with the public reporting you have. Hereby, the SEC found out that the fact that the company didn't have what they called disclosure controls, meaning to make sure that those who are responsible to report to the market understand the technical aspects of the deal, was actually a violation of the law. Interesting case. I wish we had more time to discuss it. Thank you for our panel of experts.
Thank you so much, Nimrod and everybody. This first American financial case is an earthquake in the cybersecurity world, in the way information flows inside organizations, and I hope that you understood through this panel the complicated aspects of how companies need to work with regulators. I want to call the next speaker. Let me just open the presentation. Our next speaker is Shimri. Where are you? Oh, please come here. A worldwide cyber strategist from Cisco. Cisco is also sponsoring this event, so thank you twice. And here you go.
Thank you very much, Menny. It's a great honor, and I'm excited to be here in front of you and discuss about Cisco's new approach to supply chain. My role in Cisco is managing South Europe cyber business development, and as such, I encounter a lot of cases of rethinking new approaches for large customers, such as banking, insurance, some in Israel, some in France, some in Spain, so very complex ones. And I'll present in short, since I have 9 minutes from now, I think, so as short as I can, our core perspectives. First of all, understanding a little bit supply chain crisis era, and Menny has already discussed about it, so I'll do it in a nutshell. Two major supply chain attacks that I think everybody in the room knows, heard about, drilled about, and whatever, read in a lot of places. First of all, Microsoft has been attacked with Exchange. We have Hafnium, you can name it any way you know, the Chinese group, and APT29, aka Kozibur, SolarWinds attack. Both attacks, I think, were bad and good. Bad in a sense that it affected 18,000 customers in one, at least, and something like 100,000 customers in the other. Some say 200,000, depends which paper do you read. But what's good about it, that boards understood that we have a different case over here and we need to take it much more seriously at the board level. And when I'm talking about much more seriously, probably this NIST is being read by most of the boards somewhere, somehow, 800-161 about supply chain risk management. But if you look at it statistically, 80 to 85% of the boards doesn't exactly practice it. I mean, there isn't a real plan of what happens in a crisis, what are we doing, who is the supervisor, who will be taking care of the mission, as the guys now said over here, told you, probably in the crisis management, there will be an effect of someone taking a stress and thinking what to do. So we need to look at it from top down. We need to take it down to the mission level, business owners, and later on to the information system. There has to be a plan for crisis management with a crisis management company, such as some companies are sitting here in the room. There has to be a plan for the lawyers, for the marketing, for the financials, who's doing what, who's practicing what and how, who's the owner, what is the CEO supposed to do. Everybody needs to get ready. So how do you do it compared to Cisco concept, I would say? First of all, we look at it from a secured, controlled, zero trust environment, which means you need to be ready that everything is secured, everything is controlled for the entire supply chain. And when I mean entire supply chain, it means your suppliers, it means everybody that delivers you hardware, software, services as a company. It can be even a small management software of your HVAC, HVAC, sorry about the short word, air condition, okay, something management. And if you look at a lot of breaches in Israel during the last 2 years, it comes from this system. There's a management system of the air conditioning, and someone breaches it, waits a little time, breaches another one, and hoping into the next one until it gets to your core system. Now, if we're talking about key challenges for seamless crisis readiness, so talent gap, all of you in this room knows that if we're talking about numbers, it's approximately 2 million experts missing in Europe, another a few millions missing in USA. So we have a huge talent gap. As companies, as CEOs, please go to the experts. There's a lot of experts in the market, companies. Go to the experts, use them, because recruiting a talent can take you a lot more time than being hacked. So if you do that, you need strategy. How do you do that? Who's doing what? You take retainers for which companies? Who manages your legal? Who manages your response team? And eventually, you need a board management to define RACI, depends how do you say it, responsibility, accountability, consulted and informed. You need a table being ready for the D-Day. Don't wait to get there and then think, what am I doing? You take out the table, you say, okay, the marketing guy is doing that, security guy is doing that, CEO is doing that, and then in 1, 2, 3 hours, you already got a response team around the table as we had over here. So the way we look at it is how do we secure and control the supply chain? we need to ask ourselves 4 questions as senior managers. First of all, do we have full visibility of our supply chain? And earlier this week, I had a conversation with one customer who asked me, I have a supplier that wants to get directly into my system, beyond the DMZ, directly into my system. Should I do it or not? So the key answer is, you know it, not. No supplier should enter your core system. But you need to figure out which software does he has. Is he patching it? Which vulnerabilities does he have? How often he manages his vulnerabilities? Who is doing that? Does he have a software to do that? For each and every supplier, I know it's hard, but you need to have a supplier management team. Later on, after you will do that, you will get a full visibility, you need to automate. And when I mean automate, you need everything on an automated scale. Suppliers, your system, deliverables, everything needs to be automated from a vulnerability perspective. This is the only way you will get to process maturity and lead towards predictability. Why do we need predictability? Because the attack surface is constantly changing. And if we will not change with our attack surface, probably we'll have somewhere APTs in our system. So this is the way to prepare to cyber crisis readiness. And if we look at it as a vision, then we need a business continuity maturity level. Most of the companies, as far as we know it, are in somewhere between best effort to manual, and I'm not talking only about small companies. I'm working with huge companies in France, 900 factories, 40 offices, manual, no CMDB, manual, okay? So it's not one company or 2 companies, there's a lot of them that still work manual. You need to at least be in the defined level, have full visibility, move to the automation level, and finally predictability. It's a 1-2 year process. It's not something that you will do from today for tomorrow, but you need to do it. Now, something important that the team over here, Dan and Karen and the rest of the guys has mentioned, and I have to stress, this is a concept that came from our research intelligence company, Talos. Probably most of you heard about it. The largest private company on earth doing that. They have a concept that looks at it from the same perspective as the guys over here mentioned. You need to combine cyber insurance, breach coaches, and incident responders prior to the case. Not when you have the case, not when you react. You have to have a plan of these guys working together prior to the case. You have to know who's your cyber insurer, what is he responsible for, who are your breach coaches, who will be the lawyer that you will talk to, who will be the marketing expert that you will talk to, who will be the accountant that you will talk to, and I mean outside companies, because they need to consult with the stressed guys in your company. Probably your legal would be stressed, your marketing will be stressed. You need someone from outside to give the right advices in real time. And eventually you need incident responders such as crisis management companies, along with an intelligence company behind it. All of this as a kind of an SLA that you have before the case. Do not wait for the case, have it. And finally, since Menny already gave me 30 seconds, 1 more minute. Okay. I would say we have 4 key stages to create crisis management readiness. First of all, first and foremost, assess and plan your current state, end-to-end supply chain, software, hardware, any supplier that you might think of, any software that runs in your environment, left to right. Okay, shift left, don't wait. Go to the early stage of development of the companies that supply you software. Go to your early stage of development and check how are they working. Because if you have a software management software and they tell you, yes, we are safe, we're doing vulnerability management, but they developed it very quickly without checking the code, then probably there's something inside there. Later on, ensure that you have full visibility leading to automation and predictability. This is a long-term process, but begin it with your board. It should be a top-down process and not from the information technologies, I would say. Thank you very much. I see he's standing already, and was a pleasure.
Thank you, Shui. Thank you for this amazing presentation. And again, thank you, Cisco, for sponsoring this event. We're going to have another presentation. I talked to my good friend, Yaniv Harel, from Signia, Dr. Yaniv Harel, we had long conversation about how to make this event very interesting and who's the right person to bring here and what should be the right topic. And we have an amazing speaker from Signia, who is also a sponsor for this event. I want to call to the stage David Warshavsky to give a presentation, a 10 minutes presentation, 9.5, 9:25, 9:21. The stage is yours.
Okay. Thanks. Got it? Okay. Thanks, Manny. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. We don't have a lot of time, so what we're going to do today is I'm going to quickly walk us through an attack of an organization called Niletra Pharma and attribute it to a threat actor called Elliptic Spider. Now, don't bother searching those names on Google. They don't exist. These are made-up names. The details were heavily modified to protect the identity of the targeted organization. However, rest assured, this is very much based on a real-life attack, or rather, a series of real-life attacks that we've responded to in the past 18 months. So let's get started. The attack began on August 1st. The threat actor, realizing that many employees are still working from home, begins to massively scan the internet, searching for vulnerable home routers. And indeed, they managed to identify tens of thousands of these vulnerable routers, and they then turned to publicly available exploitation frameworks, such as Routersploit, which you can see on the right, and they leverage those to exploit the vulnerable routers and install their own custom malware, effectively taking over the home environment. Now, what they do next is they leverage the infected routers in a man-in-the-middle attack. They identify employees that are connecting to enterprise-grade remote access solutions, and once they do that, they establish a persistent command and control communication channel that allows them to basically ride that VPN split tunnel and access internal corporate resources. And as they do this, they're able to avoid perimeter defenses, network proxies, network firewalls. This is, by the way, a common theme of many of the attacks that we see in the past 18 months, 2 years, as more employees are working from home, that loss of visibility that is also painful to many of these organizations. Now, once inside, they methodically map the environment, they move laterally, compromise critical assets, and in the course of over the next 2 weeks, they managed to take over most of the domains that constitute the Niletra network. Now they're ready for the final stage of the attack. In the early morning of August 20th, they leverage Niletra's SCCM, that's their centralized IT deployment solution. They leverage their SCCM to deploy their own unique ransomware variant. Another common theme of the attacks that we see, threat actors turn to not their own proprietary tools and methodologies, rather they use organizations' own IT and security stack against them. This is very cunning, this is very evasive, and this is very effective. In the next couple of hours, they monitor the situation. They see that indeed many servers and applications are being encrypted. At this point, they take a step back and begin the monetization phase of the attack. They send this email containing a ransom note demanding 3,000 Bitcoins in exchange for the decryption keys and a promise to withhold any further attacks. Now, obviously, at this point, Niletra is aware that they are under attack. However, turmoil ensues, and it takes them about 24 hours until they contact external vendors, among them Signia, and that's where we mobilize and come in. Now, obviously, we have a crisis on our hands, as is the theme of this conference, and it's very challenging to respond to any crisis, let alone one where some of the critical stakeholders, including IT, security, and some of the executive leadership, are working from home. So first thing that we do, we establish a virtual war room and wartime cadence. We establish direct lines of communication and reporting, and we invest critical time in making sure that everyone is aware of his or her roles and responsibilities. Otherwise, it will be chaos. We then launch 3 parallel work streams. Containment. 24 hours in, the ransomware is still spreading in the environment. We make a fairly easy decision in this case to unplug certain elements of the environment, realizing that this will affect production, but it beats the alternative. Next, investigation. Some may argue that investigation is secondary in ransomware incidents. I would say otherwise. Investigation is crucial because we need to answer 3 critical questions. 1, whether the threat actor is still active in the environment and whether there are any dormant backdoors that they can leverage. 2, what are the methods and tools and vulnerabilities leveraged during this attack, because we want to remediate those as we remediate and recover. And 3, whether any sensitive information has been exfiltrated. On to the recovery. In every attack such as this, there's always extreme pressure from the business to recover operations as soon as humanly possible. Now, we need to maintain a very delicate balance. Recover too quickly, and we risk compromising tampered or compromised, we risk introducing into the environment compromised servers and basically handing over the threat actor away inside. Recover too slowly for the sake of security, and we risk damaging the business, and dangerously so. So we need to maintain a delicate balance, and whether we do this is we establish a clear, secure recovery process in a way to effectively sanitize systems before they are introduced safely. In parallel, we also launch a tactical negotiation effort. Now, I won't dive into the details of the negotiation. My esteemed colleague, Moty Cristal, can elaborate on that. But I will say that one of the main reasons we almost always decide to negotiate, even if we have no intention to pay the ransom, is to buy time. We can buy precious time while negotiating, and every hour counts. Every hour that the threat actor is busy negotiating and not attacking is an hour that we can focus our efforts on remediation and recovery and expanding visibility. Now, there are some interesting highlights from the investigation, but I'd like to just sort of recap what had happened. At the end, we won. It was a close call, but we were able to identify dormant backdoors and remove those from the environment. We were able to recover most of the production systems within days, which was an amazing feat by the company's IT with our support. And ransom wasn't paid, which was a win. Now, in this case, ransomware wasn't paid, but ransom wasn't paid, but ransomware was deployed. We want to talk about some interesting things that organizations that we work with do extremely well to prevent ransomware deployment to begin with. We have the privilege of working with some organizations that do some things extremely well, and they're able to prevent or at least mitigate significantly threat actors' ability to deploy ransomware within the environment. Now, we won't have time to cover everything. I want to highlight just one thing in particular, which is very important. It's leveraging control of your terrain. We are working with organizations who do, this is really incredible. They do not necessarily have the shiniest tool with advanced AI and machine learning. What they do is maximize fully on the security stack that they already have. They do not have necessarily the best of breed technology, the best EDR or AV or firewall, but they invest time and effort in turning every knob, checking every box, making sure that the security stack is customized to the environment and alerts are contextualized to remove false positives, and they make minor architectural changes to the environment to make sure that the threat actor that was able to gain access will not be able to move laterally and compromise critical assets. Now, with that, I want to leave you on a positive note, is that you'll hear a lot in the news about organizations that are getting hammered and they have to pay ransom and they're under attack. I can say that we have the privilege of working with organizations, more and more organizations, that can successfully defeat these attacks, and these are some things that they do. So I'm fairly optimistic. It's not unlike COVID, this is not going away, but this is manageable, and I see companies winning, and we can win, and I wish us all good luck in this fight. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you for this amazing presentation and those amazing results fighting those bad guys. we're going to have another simulation now, very interesting simulation that will be run by my good friend Ophir. He is a colonel in reserve. He spent most of his life in the Air Force. In his last position, he was the head of the Ophir unit, who is the software unit, the IT unit of the Air Force. He managed 1,200 engineers, something like that, maybe more. And after leaving, he did some things, and then he did this huge, stupid mistake of becoming my partner, and together with Nimrod and Dan at Cytactic. So Ophir, the stage is absolutely yours. This is yours? No. Okay.
Okay. So under the immortal saying of never waste a good crisis, anyone knows who said that? A report on the general recession in 2009 in the US. We'll jump right into the next panel, which is basically dealing with a malware in a package, or what we call a supply chain attack, when your supply comes with an extra piece of code. Now, recently we've heard a lot of very impactful incidents. The last one I think is Kaseya, which I guess most of the people know here. Some people wrote over here and in the panel wrote very interesting reports on Kaseya and the impact of the breach. Before that, Microsoft signed accidentally a driver with a malware inside. Instead of Intel inside, it was a malware inside with a golden ticket to the operating systems. Just before that, we had the SolarWinds and CodeCov incident, which we'll touch briefly here in the panel. And so question is, are we shifting from what we call SaaS to VAS, or software, instead of software as a service, to vulnerability as a service? And to discuss this, we have an amazing panel of experts. Please, guys, take your seats. We have here Michal Shlomo from AIG, Omer Cohen from Mitiga, Maya Zehavi, which is a crypto analyst, Boaz Dolev, the CEO of Clear Sky Security, and Itai Yonat, the owner and CEO of 2500 Group. And as Menny said, I'm Ophir Bear, and I'm partner in the Cytactic Cyber Crisis Management, and I'll host this panel, as you probably understood. Now, the supply chain providers, or actually service providers, becoming a kind of the key maker from the Matrix movie. They hold secret keys for virtual doors, virtual backdoors in our system, which raises very interesting dilemmas in cyber incidents that that happen every now and then. And we will have this amazing team of panelists answer some of the dilemmas, and we'll use their tips in order to understand better what's right and wrong to do in those incidents. And the way that we chose to address this panel is to tell you a story about one of our customers. This customer develops a software product. It has a global private company. It has about 2,000 customers worldwide. We can't disclose the name of the company, but we'll call it Tuesday.com. Just want to make sure that you're awake. There's nothing to do with the other company that you think it is. So on April 1st, Tuesday CISO, which is John, wakes up and reads an article about a breach in CodeCov. Now, CodeCov is a code coverage service, kind of plugins into Git, services more than 29,000 enterprises around the world. And it happens to be that for the last 3 months, everything that went through CodeCov was accessible to hackers. Now, John is trying to figure out, is there actually an incident in Tuesday? And how can you figure out if Tuesday actually experienced a breach? So, Omer, I want to start with you. John is approaching you as an incident expert and asks you, hey, dude, what can you tell me? How can you help me?
That's a very good question. Can you hear me? Yeah? Okay. So that's a very good question. And the challenge with the CodeCov breach is, just like you said, everything that went through CodeCov was potentially accessible to the attacker. The question is, was it used? So imagine you, as an attacker, had all of a sudden 30,000 customer data. Usually what you have in those CodeCov scripts are access to the CI platforms, allowing you access to their Git, to their build platforms, and everything that runs behind it. And every customer from those 30,000 is different. So it's not like you can find a specific signature and say, okay, I'm going to search that in my logs, and if I found it, it's there. It's every one of those customers could have a unique attack on their environment from that breach. So if you come to me and ask if you were breached, we need to understand, what did you have there in CodeCov? What kind of secrets did you expose there? And analyze it step by step, just like a unique attack, and not like a full-blown, like 30,000 customer breach. Each one of those 30,000 customers has had a potential unique incident that needs to be investigated. So accessing the data, trying to understand how they used CodeCov, and taking it one step at a time to analyze.
Thank you. Michal, from your experience, Tuesday, actually saw Menny's presentation and understood that, a breach is just a matter of time. It will happen to everyone. And so they preempt the D-Day and purchased a cyber insurance policy. And John is wondering, when is the right time to address or to communicate with the insurance provider?
Let's see, does it work? Okay. So the answer is as soon as possible. Whenever you find out there is a vulnerability, or that you've been hacked, or that is there some kind of cyber incident, let your insurance brokers know about it, and let the insurance company involved as soon as possible. Because cyber insurance is not like all kinds of other insurance that we only pay the check. On a cyber insurance, the insurance company act with the insured to help him manage the risk, manage the incident. We have the best expert that can help the insured deal with the situation, and that can be a PR, IT, lawyers, etc.
Thank you. And so after we consulted with our cyber insurer, Boaz, John is contacting you and asking for your assistance. He says, listen, I need to know what to report to my CEO and board. Did I have a leak or not?
Okay, so first of all, just for you to know, supply chain attacks are a huge challenge right now. We do not have the magic solution, none of us. Mm-hmm. And you have mentioned the Microsoft driver, and Microsoft driver cannot be stopped by us. I mean, each and every company around the world is getting updates from Microsoft, and we cannot control each and every driver. Now for your question. I think that every company who is facing right now a risk of cyber attack, and especially a supply chain attack, and we are talking about CodeCov, need to understand exactly where is the risk and what should be done in order to stop or mitigate the risk. So my first reply will be, let's learn, I'd say, quite quick about what's going on right now about this vulnerability. Let's learn about maybe the code, where is it installed inside the company, and let's try to mitigate it at once. Now, there is no magic solution, as I told you. We, of course, as an intelligence company, will try to find out all the tracks, all the domain names, all the IOCs that might lead you to a known or to know exactly what needs to be done in order to mitigate this attack. But there is no magic solution.
Thank you. And so, Itai, after John understands that he has a real problem, as Boaz said, that this is a real challenge, he contacts the cyber crisis manager, who addresses you as an intelligence expert. And you're being asked, listen, Itai, can you tell us if there's anything out there? How do we know if we have a data leak or not?
Okay, so one thing that is important when we say the word intelligence, most people think about James Bond or stuff like that. No, we're not James Bond, but we bring in information that might be somewhere out there. I'm not talking now about the technical IOCs. I'm talking about more either people writing or talking about their intentions or selling things from inside the company. So intelligence team can help you in several issues when you're just starting to try and understand that you have an issue. Either it's an instant response when you're sure that the hackers are already inside or you suspect. Such a team should be able to go to what we call the dark web and see what's going on over there and see if there's some already leaked information or maybe identify other companies who are in the same situation. So that's the immediate response. And then, of course, there are later stages where they contribute as well.
And can you elaborate on the dark web surveillance? I mean, how does it work?
Well, dark web is kind of a buzzword that people like to talk about it, and you can imagine glory stories. Yes, theoretically, you can jump over there, find a stolen credit card, buy yourself drugs and weapons, and hire assassins. But in our situation, you're not looking for that. You're looking for the markets in the dark web, where you can approach them very quickly and see if something is being sold that's related to the company, or other groups or places where there's a lot of conversation and you can look for it. There are many companies giving pieces of software that can allow you in a matter of several hours to cover a lot of ground and see if such a thing happens. One word about that, those software do not have what they don't have inside, which means which kind of information they didn't acquire. So you need also some kind of a manual capability to be tailor-made. If you're a company that is dealing with industrial controllers, mostly you will not find it in this piece of software. You need someone to do it manually for you.
Okay, so basically, our customer is listening to Itai and saying, I'm looking for chatter, reminding the name of my company, since more than 29,000 companies were breached, which is like lost in the haystack. And also, John addresses the VP R&D, understanding that there are valuable secrets in the code, which he holds his fingers not to find them out in the web. Now, Boaz, if John is asking you, do you think we should report to our customers? And if so, what should we report? What would you say to him?
I would say that you need to think about the risk. What's the result of not letting your customers know? And what is the real risk for you as a company regarding reputation, regarding other aspects? I would say that at first stage, before you know exactly what's the level of breach and what needs to be done in order to mitigate it, I don't think that I would report to my customers. It would take time, but you can really do it very fast or quick, but you need to understand exactly the risk.
Michal, what's your position on disclosure to customers in this case exactly?
I think that I would have a lawyer involved and evaluate all the risk of disclosure or non-disclosure because there are many aspects to consider.
Okay, and just to understand, insurance is a part of the team who consults and manages the risk or try to estimate?
Yes, actually for every event we have a war room where all the decision is being made together with the client, together with the company. We act as an advisor, not say that our opinion is the one that counts. At the end, the insured is the one taking the decisions, and we will stand at his side and help him.
Okay, so John recommends the senior management not to disclose anything now. The company prepares an escrowed notification to the customers and to the media. And so time passes and the company says, phew, it's behind us. 2 months later, which we're now in June, customer service finds an email in their inbox saying in a very broken English that all the data of the company is in the wrong hands and they have to pay 4 Bitcoins in order these guys not to disclose the data. So Itai, is it out of the ordinary, the time that has passed from the incident or the possible incident to the extortion note?
Unfortunately not, and this is bad news for those who sign the checks. You need to pay to your support, incident response, intelligence for many months. Our average is about 3 months from the moment that you know that something has been leaked until we see it in the dark web.
And Maya, what do you say? What do you say about the extortion note and the Bitcoin wallet? Can we find anything before we decide whether to pay or not using the wallet that was sent in the email?
So I'll break it down into maybe 3 parts. First off, you can already use a lot of the forensic data that you got in the initial investigation in order to try and identify what kind of ransomware as a service the attacker's already using, be that domain names, cloud storage, and so forth. And there are some cases, for example, the Colonial Pipeline, that based on that, crypto tracing analysis has been able to be very specific and identify the wallet that the attacker is using. Now, whether or not to pay, as you asked earlier, there's a lot of justification in paying a small amount in order to verify your assumptions as to the attacker and trace it both on the network, i.e. Bitcoin in this regard, in this case, sorry, or towards different exchanges where seizure could be an option.
Thank you. Itai, if we want to make an attribution to the attackers and understand their motivation, how can we do that using smart intelligence?
Well, attribution can be done in many ways, and actually technically and technical information is a major one. But a lot of crime groups now are using subcontractors and affiliates. So you think you are standing in front of one threat actor while actually it's another one. The intelligence might be able to help you if the attackers are doing some mistakes, and luckily they are not perfect. So with some luck, we had even one event where we were able to bring the real name and address and a picture of the guy, because he was really doing some huge mistakes. I guess that following the Bitcoin might help. And even analyzing the language, the broken language, can help you to understand whether the guy was using Google Translate, which language it was translated from, and many other fingerprints.
Okay. Omer, what can you say about the recommendation whether to pay or not to pay the ransom?
So it's been 2 months since the investigation, since the original notification and attack, and depending on the story here, but you need to go back to the impact analysis you did in the beginning. What was actually compromised? In case of CodeCov, they had access to the code. They had access to the build environment, and you need to ask yourself, what can they do from there? Now, it's a matter of understanding the build environment and the cloud environment behind it, trying to analyze the data to see what they could have possibly done. Just like in a lot of cases, you don't always have the data you need to investigate, but it's a matter of understanding what can be possibly done, even if it wasn't logged or not. And from there, ultimately understanding the potential impact. Because if they had the source code of my software, there's the IP value of it, but it doesn't mean there's customer data there. And then I need to ask myself, how much is my company worth versus how much my customer's data is worth? And maybe three Bitcoins is not a lot to pay for my entire company software. But whether or not you are at risk with customer data and auditors, et cetera, really depends on what they had access to. So that's what I would go and ask myself first.
Cool. So we don't really have time to address all the complex dilemmas regarding the payment, whether this extortion note is even related to the attack. Maybe someone saw the company's name in the guys or the companies that are using CodeCov, but this company specifically decided to pay the ransom, part of it, as Maya recommended. Maya, can you share from your experience what can be done after payment? I mean, can we trace the money, retrieve the money, work with authorities? Where are we standing?
So first off, everything that is paid on chain, for the most part, unless it's privacy chains, is traceable and leaves an audit trail. So I would recommend working with authorities and starting to map out the different transactions the attacker is going through in order to so-called launder the money. And a lot of times there are two ways to seize back the money. One, if accidentally they decide to leave the tokens on chain. And if it's within a certain jurisdiction where you can enforce the law, say the US, the West, or something like that, it's possible to retrieve it, like we saw in the Colonial Pipeline case. The other option is that sometimes these ransomware services actually have their own key management system, which is hackable with given different vulnerabilities. And we've seen that also be a means with law enforcement to retrieve the tokens back.
And how do you compare the situation working with authorities here in Israel versus globally?
I've never been personally involved in a ransomware within Israel, but I can say for a good part that I think Israel specifically is a few steps behind in terms of how law enforcement both know, are knowledgeable, and have the know-how to use blockchain analysis tools for such attacks, or even use them to identify malevolent actors and how they're interacting post-hacks.
Thank you. And Michal, can you share with us what's the insurer policy for paying ransom? And is it an actor dependent?
There are three elements for cyber insurance policy. The first is the costs, and to help the company deals with the situation. The second cover is the liability part, where you have your client's information or data, and you are legally obliged to pay them. And the third part is your loss, first-party cover. And ransomware is one of the cover in the first-party cover. The other one is business interruption. So you have to take into consideration that every day that the company doesn't work, there is a direct cost for it. And this is some of the consideration we take with the company in order to decide whether to pay or not.
So basically on this situation, your recommendation?
It's not my call. Luckily, it's not my call.
Okay. Maya, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I think that in general, cyber attacks are linked to ransomware and how crypto is used for illicit actions. But in fact, we're seeing that because of ransomware and cyber insurances, this is one of those major phenomenons where cyber insurance are actually claimed, these policies, and that actually demands the insurers like AIG to one-up their enforcement on what the minimum requirement for every single corporate client is. And in general, I think long-term, that's actually going to make corporates or clients that use third parties like Howden better their cybersecurity awareness and active management of all these processes.
Let me add to this, because of the severity of ransomware during the last 2 years, we have changed our policy regarding ransomware. And now we have new ransomware strategy. When we are involved with our clients and ask them many, many questions to find out their readiness towards cyber attacks, especially ransomware. And if we believe that the client is not ready, we're not going to offer him cyber policy. Okay. And if we do offer the cyber policy, we have a sublimit for cyber events, for ransomware events, and the retention is different. Sometimes it's in in a mechanism of co-insurance with the insurance company and the insured.
So the money started moving, and we understand that the money is being transferred through what we call a mixer, a crypto mixer. Itai, can you share with us from your experience, is the money lost, or can we do anything with that?
Well, theoretically, the money is lost, but that's theoretically. Again, when we see implementations in the criminal world, some of them are just lazy, some of them are just not knowledgeable enough, and there are mixes that you can crack and go through them.
Okay, so unfortunately our time is up. I see Menny here throwing his surface on me. So I want to thank our panelists for their good advice and tips and their time. And wish all of you good cyber hygiene and safety.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Ophir, for this amazing panel. Everybody who joined us again, you got the opportunity to see the complicated aspect of dealing with a crisis. I want to call our next speaker, who comes from Cyber Reason, also represents Cyber. Let me just duplicate that, and then you will see. Cyber Reason is also a sponsor for this event, so thank you again for that. We're getting closer to the end of this event, but we have some amazing sessions ahead. I want to call to the stage Lotem Guy, VP Product at Cyber Reason. Again, sponsors for this event. Thank you so much. You have 10 minutes, maybe less, 9.1, I don't know.
Thank you very much. All right, so hi everyone. I'm Lotem Guy. I'm the VP of Product in Cyber Reason. Very excited to be here, speak in a face-to-face conference, obviously with our online audience as well. And today I'm going to talk about the true cost of ransomware. I think we already heard a lot of parts of what I'm going to speak with in the panel and in the session before, but that's just a reason to recap everything together to understand the real cost of ransomware. Because ransomware today is the #1 cyber threat that are facing all types of organization, all sizes, all sectors in the market. And there's no day that goes by when we don't see all those big articles in the newspaper. And of course, there are many other attacks that we're missing because they're not as gigantic as the one that we read about. And the last year was really the golden age of ransomware. And we saw this getting massive from the beginning of the pandemic. Actually, attackers targeted pandemic-related organizations like in the healthcare because they quickly realized that this working from home, the remote task force, just creates another aspect of this ransomware threat. And we saw ransomware before. Ransomware is with us since 2013, more or less, and we saw a spike in 2017. But the last year's spike is really a change in the game because if previously, let's say until 4 or 5 years ago, most of the victims were us, individuals, and ransomware attackers would encrypt our files, our documents, our images, and we would not want to miss our children's pictures as babies, we would pay the ransomware. But ransomware attackers shifted to attack large enterprise organizations, and they did this because they saw much more value. It's very simple. It's a business operation. Ransomware, it's important to understand it's a business operation, and individuals are paying, but much less than companies. First, because it's not trivial to pay a ransom, right? If you need to buy Bitcoin and then transfer them to the attackers, it's not that trivial. Most of us can do it, but not necessarily our parents or grandparents back home. But also, for an organization, the risk of not getting the data is higher, and therefore the willing to pay is also increased, and the amount of money that they can pay is significantly higher. And cyber insurance that we just discussed is actually a contributor to that, because everything in the business world is insured. So the cost that it costs me to actually pay a ransom when I know I'm insured is significantly reduced. What encouraged me as an organization to pay the ransom, we're creating this very negative but positive feedback loop that encourage companies to pay a ransom and therefore attackers to continue and leverage their attacks. And to be very effective with their attacks, ransomware attackers move from just encrypting your files to what we call the double extortion. So if you have a good backup, or if you don't really care for your children's pictures, you don't have to pay the ransom, right? But to make sure that you will pay, the attackers now are threatening you, the individual or mostly the organization, to publish the data that they encrypted. So usually attackers will first steal the data, encrypt it, ask you for a ransom to pay to decrypt the data, but if you want, they will threaten you to publish this either publicly to embarrass the company, or privately to whoever is willing to pay for this intellectual property that you stole from the company. And we see attackers getting more and more advanced in these capabilities. It's just never enough, because they want to increase their ratio of payers. So first we have ransomware that are served as a platform, as a service. So now you have two types of attacking group. The one that is building the platform, the ransomware platform, and selling this as a service to the attack group that is actually executing the attack, right? There are two different groups. They're both attacking organizations. Each one is responsible for a different part of the attack, and they share the benefits or the ransom payment between them. So we see that those ransomware as a service companies, groups, are increasing their capabilities, in this case, to the effectiveness of extortion of the end victim company. In this example, with attacking a DDoS attack or publishing this information to the public media. In other cases, by threatening to inform the government, the agencies of the attack, so the victim will have to work on this and work with the regulation with the authorities. So what is the true cost? And the first question is, should we pay the ransomware codes? Obviously, that's a core part of the cost, right? Now, if you do this analysis of the amount of money the attackers are asking compared to the risk in business continuity or the other aspects of the ransomware, usually, and this is how the attackers are working, they're asking for an amount that is reasonable to pay. Even $1 million or $10 million are significantly less than what an organization will lose if they're out of business for a week, especially the large organization. So if all you do is measure this, the conclusion will be to pay the ransom. But that's a very significant risk, because we just said that as more organizations are paying, the ransomware attackers are would like to attack more and more companies, right? And ask for a higher and higher payment. Now, that's kind of not a business direct thinking, because you might need to think about the greater good of the world, and now you're dealing with your own risk. But what we see is that even if you only think about your own company, paying the ransom is not beneficial, because 80% of companies that actually pay the ransom were attacked again. And that's pretty trivial, because first, the company was vulnerable, right? The attackers found their way in, and second, the attackers know that they're going to pay. So just another incentive for the attackers to attack again, right? So please don't pay. Like, there's really no good reason to pay. It might solve a very short-term problem, but it creates a bigger problem for the world, but also for you and your company. Now, the numbers here are from a survey that we conducted in Cyberzone of over 1,200 different companies from all different sectors. And I'm listing here more of the things that you need to think about when you calculate the total cost of a ransomware attack. So first is the cyber insurance. It costs to buy an insurance, but also you need to understand how much of the total cost the insurance will cover. And we see today that more than half of the organization are covered by insurance, but I'm not sure that all of them will get all the damage back from the insurers. I'm pretty sure they will not. You will need legal consultancy in addition to your legal division that will help you, because you need to understand if you need to reveal and disclose the attack or not. And there's more cost with the brand damage, with the incident response process that we talked about, with the reconstruction of your IT environment, because you really need to stand up again, continue your day-to-day business, but not suffer from this second wave of attack. So all of those are really important to consider in addition to just paying the ransom. Now, ransom operations, they have a lot of things in common. David talked about it before. And I'm going to present kind of an analysis that we did based on different type of engagement that we were conducted with, incident response, a compromise assessment, or advanced analysis. But the pattern of the attackers are repeating themselves. They need to get into the organization. They're dropping tools that usually are known in commodity with different variants to bypass classic security tools. They'll eventually want to interact with the victim and the victim devices to laterally move in the organization and eventually to steal the data, run the ransomware, and ask for the payment with all those double, triple, and quadrant extortion techniques. The good news are that every step of the way can be prevented. And that's very important to understand. So let me summarize with the good news and the bad news. And I'll start with the bad news because we're talking about this all day. Ransomware are a significant threat. It doesn't look like it's going to go anywhere. It's just being leveraged again and again. The good news are that there's not a lot of ransomware playbooks. Ransomware attackers are improving, but the playbooks are consistent. And that means that behavioral-based protection or more the advanced protection capabilities of today can stop ransomware. So I'll finish with this and only allow you to ask yourself if you're really protected against ransomware and your organization is really protected. And if you think not, please find a way to improve this by the end of this conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We have 3 things left in the session. I want to call Moshe Elias, from Simulate. Thank you so much for coming here. Let me give you the presentation. No presentation, ladies and gentlemen. This is amazing. So let me just put this opening presentation, and then we'll have this. And thank you also for sponsoring this event. We have so many amazing sponsors.
All right. So they say that a good PowerPoint presentation is basically a guide for the speaker. I have the next best thing, which is my notes, and hopefully you'll find this talk productive and informative. So just allow me to introduce myself. I work for Simulate. Simulate is a recognized leader by Frost & Sullivan and other analysts in the area of continuous security validation. It works by proactively challenging an organization's security stack, its people, processes, and technologies, and guiding them to improve their security posture. Basically, we put the adversary in the hands of the security team. Those who don't have an in-house red team leverage the capabilities of the platform, and we also help scale red teams in organizations that do have them. Ladies and gentlemen, the best way to describe the ongoing engagement with threat actors in the cyberspace is that of a state of war. We even use the same terms that the military uses: weaponizing software, infiltration. And both sides have playbooks and tactics and techniques. And if you do have your own incident response playbooks, you're probably in a good situation. But what about the tactics and techniques of the adversary? So if you just wander off or browse to the MITRE ATT&CK framework, you'll find a very large and ongoing updated database of the different tactics and techniques that APT groups and other threat actors use in order to attack different types of organizations. And it goes from recon all the way into creating the initial foothold, lateral movement, and of course, impact. The second thing I want you to consider is that 100% prevention is the stuff of fairy tales. As a leader in the in the Homeland Security organizations, one with three-letter acronyms said, you will get breached, now deal with it. But how to deal with it? And the answer is, and I'm sure you've heard this during the conference, is to be prepared. And preparation applies at all levels of the organization. At the executive level, all the way down to the threat hunters and incident responders and security analysts that are there to protect your organization. Preparation also improves security operational effectiveness, which may contain an issue before it does become a full-blown crisis. At the top level, the organization functions should include members of the executive team. We've heard the importance of the HR, the human resources, the marketing to be involved in managing a crisis. Roles and responsibilities will change during a crisis. You need to delegate authority, and you need to centralize for some actions, and you need to centralize authority for others. And assume that the crisis will not be discreet. You won't be able to keep it a secret. As my previous speaker said, ransomware threat actors are now publishing data, they're using social media in order to apply more and more pressure on their victims. And so what types of communications should you be prepared for? Internal communications, of course, who to inform, what to tell the different constituents within the organization. External communications is key to shareholders, to customers, and to the general public. Communications with national CERT organizations, and of course law enforcement agencies. And in the case of ransomware, know up front who will communicate with a threat actor. There are some very professional organizations who know how to negotiate and buy time, precious time, for the organization during an attack. Case in point, in June 2017, Maersk was hit by NotPetya. The origin of the attack was a tax accounting piece of software used by an employee, I think in the Ukraine, who downloaded a normal update to the software, which included the virus. Once the virus was activated, it took 7 minutes to propagate throughout the organization. Maersk, as many other organizations who were hit by NotPetya, the level of destruction was enormous. And due to the flat network structure, the malware spread like wildfire. I was actually on a talk with one of Maersk's employees, and he remembers a shout going out in the morning in the UK. Remember, this started off in the Ukraine. Disconnect from the network now was the shout. And so Maersk were not prepared, not at any level, not at the segmentation level in order to contain the malware, not at the communication level. It caught them totally by surprise, and not by any type of business continuity planning. They had no plan B. What did they do? So they just shut down the whole operation, and they started to investigate what happened to the organization. Luckily, very luckily, some of the data was not compromised, and they were able to rebuild. In fact, I remember someone saying here, don't let a good crisis go to waste. They were able to leapfrog and initiate many, many projects that would have taken them months or even years to execute within their organization. Now they just had to. The senior leadership at Maersk decided to be as open as possible. So if you do want to take an example of how an organization should react to such a devastating attack, then openness is probably the best practice, both internally and externally. The approach actually served the company well and gave them praise from organizations like the World Economic Forum. So I guess that is one of the best practices. But an organization excuse me, should be prepared in the case of such an event. But much more can be done at the security operations level. First of all, what happens if you're facing a crisis? Have in place the retainers for incident responders if you don't have incident responders in-house. Have in place the mechanism to bring in the consultants to do the investigation, reverse engineering, and find out if the perpetrators are still in your network after the attack. Provide temporary authority to security professionals within the organization to take steps in order to contain. It's not an easy decision to decide to disconnect from the network or disconnect servers and services that are there for production. Now that you've got the organization set up, just like in football or soccer or any other competitive sport, you want to practice different scenarios at different levels. In the realm of cybersecurity, you want to be able to simulate 1 minute. Ooh, and I thought would be quick. You want to be able to simulate what happens if malware hits someone who's working from home, or what happens if a contractor connects a compromised PC to the network. You want to be prepared for these different scenarios so that an analyst seeing an alert on the SIM system is not seeing it for the first time during a live situation. Something is really broken in the security industry today. We all rely on pen testing, but most organizations have no idea about the operational effectiveness of their organization, neither their technologies or their processes. That's where we come in. We enable even small organizations which have limited resources to be able to simulate different types of scenarios, different types of attack. We basically operationalize the MITRE ATT&CK framework so that you can be better prepared for an attack. And when it does hit, not if it hits, but when it does hit, your people have not seen it for the first time and they know what to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now we're going to have an amazing panel that I'm going to moderate. I want to call the members of the panel. Let me open the presentation, which would be number 877. It's going to be amazing, I promise you, because this is an amazing story. We're going to talk about Uber and the CISO. If you're familiar with this story, you know it's a brilliant story. If you're not familiar with this story, you will discover this story during this session. It's a unique story that tells us a lot about our industry. So, please, welcome the panelists. Please take your seats. לא שמתי את השם שלו? לא. איך זה קרה? Oh my God, so you're going to have a different slide just for you. Sorry. A short disclaimer. This disclaimer have two parts. First part saying that I'm going to describe the event as we know it. I'm not claiming that this is accurate. I'm not claiming that I'm going to say exactly what happened. But just that we develop this exercise for the sake of this exercise. So if I'm not exactly on the spot with regards to the facts, just know that it is on purpose, and this simulation is based on the information that we had, so we don't have all the information. And the second part, which is very, very important, and I will read it, it should be noted that everyone mentioned in this exercise should be presumed innocent until proved otherwise. So I will claim some things which might not be accurate, so just make sure that the things inside this exercise, are just for the sake of learning. We have amazing, amazing people here. We have Master Splinter of Law. We have, this is Ariel. We have there the CEO of Global Insurance. This is Shay. We have Ram, Mr. Cyber. This is you. We have Moty, who is Dan 7 of negotiation. We have Sharon, super hacker. And we have Anibal, who is the media superstar of the world. Okay, so each and every one of them represent different aspects of crisis management. And we're going to start with a story. And our story starts like many stories starts in the cyber world. We have the CISO getting up one morning, going to his office, opening his computer, and he sees a new email from John Doggs at protomail.com. And this new email says, "Hi, I have all data you not pay. I publish data." Right? We had many of those crises starts like that, right? You saw that, many of you saw that. What is the first thing that you do when you read this email? Anyone, what is the first thing that you do when you read this email?
I can start?
Yeah, please.
All right, so obviously this is a very stressful situation, and we're all starting to experience the fog of war. When we get this on a call with a client that receives such a note, then we usually try to do four things, and more or less in parallel. The first thing, we need to start investigating. And this is the forensic investigation is where we start to understand what has happened, what are we up against, in order to enable smart decision making, even if ultimately a decision is made to pay the ransom, or to pay an extortionist when he has our data. So we understand that ransom payment is not a quick fix. Second thing that we do, and I'm sure Moty will talk about it, and we recommend to do, is to start negotiating, to start engaging with the threat actor. Again, disconnected with the decision whether we are complying with these demands and we want to pay any ransomware. And we start to negotiate for tactical reasons, to better understand what we're up against, to confirm the veracity of the threat actor's claims, to buy time, and maybe also to negotiate a price. Third thing, and this is especially important in ransomware, but also in a data breach like in this case, to start remediating. And not wait until we have a full understanding of the picture, but start raising our defenses, reinforcing them, focusing at the beginning on containment and later on eradication and recovery. And last thing, and I think this is very important in this specific case, is to set up a crisis management infrastructure. Make sure senior management is aware, is involved. There is a battle rhythm or cadence. A worm is setting up. We have out-of-bound communications, for example, so the threat actor doesn't know what we're talking about.
Brilliant. Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much for this answer. Let's try to keep those answers a bit shorter. So just to challenge one thing that you said, I just received an email, and suddenly I have to come and hire Signia, for example, and pay like $2 billion just because I received one email. At least $2 billion. It makes sense. Just because of one email, I already call my IR company and spend $2 billion just for checking things. This is a great way to create damages for organizations. I will just send them an email saying that I have their data, and they will spend the money. I don't even need to do anything.
We first
the sound is down.
We first reply to the email. Thank you very much. Did you mean me? What type of information? How old is the information? Because I'm sure that any individual in the room got in the last year at least one email that say, "Hey, mister, we know, we have your camera on," and you immediately delete. This is not this type of email, but we start to learn what is behind this email. And then we bring...
Let me challenge that as well. And I want to use Ariel for that. So you received this email. You responded immediately, right? Saying, who are you? And at this point, the hacker, the person, might send you a proof that they actually have your data. Wouldn't that completely change your legal situation the moment you have a proof? Your situation before you got this proof and the situation after you got the proof. Is it a totally different situation, Ariel?
Yeah, definitely. Is there a sound? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think once you, I mean, it's very different in each and every jurisdiction, the threshold of what would be considered as a data breach. You know, there are sometimes the technological definition of a data breach is not exactly the one that brings legal obligations, and not always the legal obligations are stemming from only from data breach of personal information. But generally speaking, once you are aware that there is a high risk of breaching natural persons' freedoms or rights, you are in a place that you would need to think what and how to notify either regulators or the data subjects themselves. And the problem is that if you have, like any internet company, you have data subjects from different jurisdictions, the threshold for when and how and if to report is very, very different from each and every jurisdiction.
Okay, this is a brilliant point. Up until the moment you answered, you can claim, you know what, this is just a threat. I get many threats. You have the time. You don't need to tell anyone. You are not in a place where you know for a fact that you had an incident. But the moment the hacker sends you the proof, now it's a totally different game. Now you have to notify people. The time clock is ticking. So before you reply to the hacker, you have to make sure that you control the scene, that you maybe conducted some kind of an internal investigation to make sure that your people are prepared. So when the hacker will send you the proof, you are ready and it doesn't catch you off guard. When I receive this email, should I already approach the insurance?
So let's remember that most of our customers worldwide would not understand 95% of what you're saying here. So they're confronted with something like that for the first time in their life, and they need somebody to consult them. Okay, so they would probably, if you are a good insurance company, you did a good onboarding process to your client, you would tell him, look, when you have such an event, please consult with us. Even if you think this is just a threat and it's not an actual event, consult with us. Because we have a lot of experience around these kind of events, we will probably be able to tell him in the very initial part of the event, please notify the insurance company, start the whole process, or just wait and let's see what's happening. So
I just received the email. I will call you telling you, you know what, I received this email, I don't know anything yet.
Exactly. It doesn't cost you any money.
So I should
you already paid the money.
That's very, very interesting. Should I tell the public something?
So at this point, we still don't know what is happening. So I think we start assuming what are the possible scenarios. And once we understand that it's a real threat, we have to know what are we going to do. Because eventually, if something like this happened and no one knows about it, so did it happen? Previously, someone said about the pressure. So using the media or social media or other channels are essential part of those events. So we have to assume that someone, it could be those who are doing this, it could be someone internally, someone externally, that will leak the story. So at this point, I would say that we have to know what our options are and how are we going, what are we going to do eventually. But at this point, we don't know what is happening. So no, we won't share the media yet.
Perfect. We don't have a lot of time. I want to move forward. So in this case, the hackers did send a proof. 57 million records were stolen. That's a big, big, big case. Now, at the same time, the problem is, up until now, it was a regular cyber incident. But the problem is that during this incident, the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, is investigating Uber. So while the FTC is investigating Uber, they have another cyber incident. And why is the FTC investigating Uber? Because they had another cyber incident 2 years ago, and the FTC feel that they didn't deal with it correctly. So the CISO knows that while he sees this email and he discovered that 57 million records were stolen, the FTC is there. How does an FTC investigate look like, Ariel? So is this like a big deal or not a big deal?
It's a very big deal because, first of all, the FTC usually is not an authority that just gives you some fine or a final decision, and that's all. Many types of investigations and cases involve, in addition to the final decision, some ongoing monitoring and compliance framework. But the problem for the organization is that authorities like the FTC are not enforcing only limited aspects of, I don't know, privacy or personal data protection. Their mandate is much wider, and because their mandate is to investigate and to enforce things that are related to fairness in commerce, they may think that what you do or don't do is unfair or unfair commerce and would affect your compliance with the law, even if it's not a data breach or personal data breach.
Perfect. So let's move forward. And this is the turning point. This is the moment where this story becomes interesting. The CISO doesn't want to tell the FTC that this event happened. And he is looking for a way to make this go away. And he had an idea. He said, instead of paying the hackers, admitting that they had an incident, let me convince the hackers to disclose their attack through our bug bounty program. Ram, what is a bug bounty program, and why is it so important?
A bug bounty program is a program that allows white hat hackers disclose vulnerabilities they found in a corporate network in exchange for money. And it is used by many companies around the world to recruit the global hackers community for their benefit.
So this is legitimate hackers, right? Legitimate hackers use that. If I'm a security researcher, I will use this to disclose problems that I found to Uber.
In principle, yes, but this is not the case, because in this case, they did not disclose the vulnerability, they disclosed the breach, meaning they already downloaded them from the AWS S3, meaning all this, they have all the information, and it's not only a vulnerability, meaning a way in, it's the entire dump, meaning they have been hacked. But yeah. I'd like to say something that
please.
You've mentioned something that's extremely important. We have to keep in mind that the psychological state of Mr. Sullivan, who was the CISO of Uber, was that he fucked up once. Now, in the middle of an investigation of the FTC, he fucks up again. And he wants to do everything in his power that the whole world will not know, because he's ashamed of what he did. In the beginning, when I read it, I was like, what kind of a stupid guy would do what he did? But he was ashamed. Meaning, a lot of the things that we expect from companies to do we operate under the assumption that they are rational in a way. But he was not rational in any way. He was ashamed that he would be caught again, that he fucked up, and somebody penetrated Uber once again, and he wanted to make it all, as you said, make it all go away.
Brilliant. Okay, so his idea was instead, so he called the hackers and he told them, let's forget for a second that you stole information. I'm willing to pay you whatever you want. Just tell me about the problems that you found through the bug bounty program, and I will tell everybody that you are security researchers and nothing happened, and I will pay you, and suddenly you are becoming a security company, which I have a lot of those, and nobody will know. He also signs the hackers. He makes the hackers sign an NDA. He doesn't know their names, but they sign the NDA. And my question, Moty, is what would the process look like? How would you convince hackers to move from extorting you to the bug bounty program?
If this is something that they want, it will be easy. The challenge, which I had a couple of years ago, was a hacker, a white hat hacker, who actually exposed himself and really harassed the company. So in a slow process, it took 3 months, we persuade them, actually, instead of attacking the company, doing a project for the company that will satisfy his interest and the other side interest. In one of the early cases that I had, the problem was with the company that actually paid the ransom, but one of the shareholders said, you know, I cannot be extorted, but it was worth the payment. So I said, 1 second, and I asked the hacker actually to submit a pen test report. So the hacker submitted a pen test report. 2 years later, I went and I realized that the signature was of a very famous Russian 16th century artist. And then everybody was happy. And that's actually the bottom line of negotiating with hackers, that these people are human beings. They're not like guys behind the hoodies, machines behind the hoodies, and they care about things. And it's our responsibility to identify what is that they want.
So this is amazing because you're touching a very important point. This is not a very rare occasion where a company is trying to find ways to make a hacking incident a legitimate case, right? They're trying to hire the hackers. They're telling them, please help us. Let's put you on a payroll, right? Creative ways in order to transform this illegal hacking incident into something they don't need to disclose, right? It happens from time to time. We will talk about how this affects insurance in a second. So let's move forward because we have 5 minutes and I want to move forward very, very quickly. The story continues. The hackers agreed. They got payment of $100,000 with Bitcoin. For a few months, it seems like it was a success. The CISO was happy. Everybody was happy. The hackers were happy. The organization was happy. The FTC was happy because they didn't know anything. So everything worked okay. And then a new CEO comes to Uber. And now this new CEO hears about this case. People try to hide this case, but he hears about this case. Immediately, he does a few things. But let me ask you, what do you think, each and every one of you, quickly, what do you think the first thing that the new CEO, the moment he hears about this case, should do? You want to start?
Actually, at this point, it's already too late. As we said, those kind of stories usually somehow they're published and they're out. So at this point, one of the things that they probably should do is investigate what are the efforts in the side of the things that the company has done since the first investigation of the
Should you disclose to the public at this point?
It's a challenging question because we can imagine the headlines. Uber is being exposed for the second time while the FTC is investigating. We already saw the headlines, so it is going to be a big story. And maybe the right thing to do would be to take responsibility and to say that we have tried to do it. Many, as we saw, many companies are suffering from this, and to try maybe to share the conclusions or the insights or takes for other companies and how should they approach it.
Sean, quickly.
First thing I would do is conduct an independent investigation and assessment. Once he has those initial findings, I think the logical choice is to notify and suspend the people involved in what cannot be called another word but collusion.
Yeah, the hackers might be still inside, right? Nobody knows. Yeah.
Regarding the CISO, I would really send him in a one-way ticket to
Jamaica or somewhere.
That's definitely in order to signal the public that this is no longer in the level of the CISO, but rather in the we take control.
Yeah.
I would do what Moty said and hire Moty to take care of the negotiation.
He has to call the lawyers. He's in deep shit.
He needs to call the lawyer.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so the CEO says 1 minute. Yeah. So let me conclude the story because we have 1 minute and I don't want to, let me just tell you the story at the end of the story. But I agree. The CISO says, not on my watch, I'm going to talk about everything. He published a message to the public saying everything. He says, you might ask yourself, how did it happen? I don't know as a CEO, but I'm going to investigate. He immediately calls Uber's CISO and fires him. And he also fires the person from the legal department who worked with him. So those people no longer work there. And he notifies, obviously, the public, and it becomes a big scandal. Everybody talks about that, the fact that Uber hid the incident. Now the CISO is on trial, and he might receive up to 8 years in jail because of that. And the two other hackers were eventually caught, and they might face 5 years of jail time each. And the point, and Uber also paid $148 million in settlement for the FTC, which probably not covered by insurance. No way it's covered by insurance because of everything that happened. But this is just the amount they paid. This doesn't include the amount they paid for the lawyers, the amount they paid for the negotiators, the amount they paid for the IR company, the PR company, and so on and so forth. So yeah, so they paid, and the amount of money that they will pay when they are being sued. So as I said, the indirect damages are much greater than the direct damages. I wanted to ask what is the right way to do things, but we don't have the time for that. I just want to ask you guys with a raise of hand, do you think that it is okay for the CISO to go to jail? Raise your hand if you agree that this is a legitimate situation. Interesting. Raise your hand if you think that the CISO should not go to jail, but maybe someone else in the company or no one in the company. Just raise your hand if you don't think that the CISO should go to jail. Interesting. There is a debate.
These are the CISOs.
Yeah. There is a debate in the cybersecurity world whether the CISO should be charged or not, but this is definitely not the way to deal with a crisis. And we saw the different aspects of a simple situation where you got extorted, but it became a huge, huge incident. Thank you so much, everybody, for participating here in this amazing, amazing session. We have one last thing. We have my good friend, Omer Cohen, who will tell us a short story about an incident, and this will end this session. Omer, thank you so much for coming. And Omer is coming from Mitiga, who is, surprise, surprise, also a sponsor.
All right. So I tried to pull a Menny on this presentation and try and use only images. I don't know if you've seen any Menny's talks. I'm going to try and keep it simple and tell you exactly a story about crisis management in a cloud environment. I'm going to actually steal Ophir's CodeCov topic from the panel and try and talk about that. A couple words about myself. I run the incident response group at Mitiga. I've been breaking things since I've been a kid, since the tape recorder and the model airplanes till computers and now clouds. It's a lot of fun. And also myself, I used to skydive till a couple of years ago until I had a small accident. Broke a few bones, but that's life. So I like to break stuff, fix stuff, understand how they work. And, okay, so a lot of companies are moving away from, migrating from their cloud, from on-prem to cloud environments. And they have this approach, and even myself, a few years ago, I used to do a lot of incident response, a lot of security for enterprise companies, mostly Fortune 50 companies, and feeling pretty confident about being able to respond to incidents. Security, application security, enterprise security, we felt pretty confident about our ability to understand how things work, understand the gaps where we're covered, where we're not, and how to handle it. And then cloud migration came over, and we said, okay, we're going to be doing pretty much exactly the same thing, but in a cloud, right? Cloud is just someone else's computer. So let's take that approach. Everybody started with just launching servers in cloud, infrastructure as a service. I'm just going to hire servers. But very quickly understood it's not very cost efficient, and it's going to cost us a lot more to pay for those servers. And that's where SaaS came into play. Now, the idea of SaaS is someone else is taking care of everything for you. You don't need to take care of patches or setting up operating systems or securing infrastructure. You just get an application, you get a service. CodeCov is a good example. The idea around continuous integration and development is I have my code. Every time I push a commit to that code, someone else is going to make sure I cover all my code with testing, run all the integrations, that my code works together with other pieces of code, and everything works together very, very quickly, very, very efficiently. And I don't need to do anything. I just write a few lines and say, run this script, and it'll run. But it still is someone else's computer. It still is an environment that needs to be secure, but now I have no control over it, right? I trust the cloud providers to be badasses in security and take care of everything, but I don't know about you guys. I'm a paranoid. If I can't touch it, if I can't take it apart, see how it works, really understand how everything is built underneath, I don't feel comfortable understanding that it's secure if I can't handle it myself. And if there's an incident and I want to jump in, it's someone else's computer. I don't have access to it. There's just not much that I can do. So again, we point to our cloud providers. But it's no longer AWS or Google or Azure. It's CodeCov. It's a software company. They are now my cloud. They're a SaaS provider, and they're providing all of my solution, and I expect them to talk to Amazon. So we go back to the supply chain concept where there's just so many links in the chain right now, and it's not just me on a server, on an application, securing it. It's someone else's software using someone else's infrastructure, someone else's computer, and it's a mess. And I'm not ready for battle anymore. I feel kind of lost, and that's the stage where I really want to understand how things work. So if you go back to basics with security, especially when it comes to incident response, you want to be able to investigate. So logs. We all love logs. That's what we need. That's what really helps us understand what happened in a system. But again, it's a cloud. It's someone else's computer. Someone else configured it. I can't just go and create logs. I'm not controlling the application on the other side. I have zero control over CodeCov's infrastructure. I can't ask CodeCov to give me their logs to do the investigation for them to understand how they impacted my business. I have zero control over them. So I invite everybody today to go home and take a look at whatever cloud solutions they use today and try and really understand if today there was a security update from that company saying, we got breached and you, our customer, everything you stored with us is also impacted. How would you go about understanding what happened? What really happened to them? And you can be sure they're not going to give you any of their logs or any of their data. They're just going to tell you we've been breached. And when it comes to cloud, talking to clouds, you want to understand how your environment was impacted. So again, I don't mean to scare you too much, but there's this concept of cloud is secure, cloud is great, but you just don't know what's underneath. You have no idea what's going on under there, so make the effort to really understand it. So if someone where you work says like, there's a new cloud application, new cloud provider, it's doing really cool stuff, let's just send all of our data to it, and it'll do great stuff for us. I invite you to better understand their security posture, the security policies. How are you going to be able to investigate and understand what happened when they get breached? Because it's someone else's computers and computers get breached, right? It's a concept that we need to accept. So finally, again, I didn't mean to scare you guys too much, but I just wanted to do like a wake-up call. You got to better understand what's going on in your cloud providers, and they have great solutions. Even those SaaS companies, if you're a large enterprise customer, if you ask for If you ask for the security policies as a customer, they'll have to respond to you. There are all sorts of compliance and frameworks that help frame these situations for you as a customer needing to get that data from them. Ask it. Ask to understand how it works. And you don't have to be an expert. Just need to be able to ask the right questions and start by asking yourself, if I was breached today, if someone else hacked CodeCov, what does it mean to me? And what am I going to need to do when that happens? So it's not that scary out there. You just need to ask the right questions and you'll get those answers. And if you're not happy with the answers you get, that's the beautiful thing about the cloud environment. You can always hop and change providers, and those companies pop up very frequently. So and they improve, and it's not just on you to build everything yourself. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Omer. Okay, guys, it was amazing, right? It was amazing. I know it was. Let me ask you something. Dr. Nimrod, do you want to come here for a second? Yeah? Do you want to come here for a second? So Yaniv and I have been working for many years together since we were at the army, right? And we were in the army together, and then when you were at the EMC, we worked together, and now you're at Signia. We work together. I want to say thank you for helping me with everything and all those. Is there anything you want to say? Is there something you want to say hi to everybody or something?
I would like to say two things. One, my takeaways from this event is first that I'm excited to see so many experts in this area, here in this audience, in this hall, helping to local clients, but also to global ones. This is amazing, and we learn a lot here. And the second one, that we have such a leader like Menny that really create this event that will be now every year, a crisis management event that will be part of the Cyber Weeks going forward. So Menny, amazing.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So thank you so much. There are two things I wanted to say. Number one, I want to talk about the rest of the Cyber Week. So tomorrow we have the main plenary. It starts at noon, somewhere at noon. It's going to be on small Arshans, and we're going to have amazing speakers. We're going to have people from abroad coming to Israel to speak. You should go there. You should visit the main plenary tomorrow, and it will continue on Wednesday. At Wednesday morning, we're going to have the Prime Minister. As Professor Ben Israel said, he will officially open the Cyber Week, which will be at the end of the Cyber Week, but that's the way we do things in Israel. On Thursday, we have an amazing event. It's going to be in Hebrew, so the title in Hebrew is Dilemot ve'achrayut niulit bedivuach l'sikunei ve'irei cyber. So this is exactly on the point of how do you notify regulators, how do you work with external entities. If you're interested in this event, we have papers here with the agenda. I'm going to leave them here. You should take one. The second thing I want to tell you is about crisis management. What we've learned today, and we learned a few things today. Number one, that crisis management is not just a technological issue. It's a multidisciplinary issue. And when you have a crisis, there are many questions to be asked. Who you should notify? Should you notify the regulators? When you should notify the regulators? How would you notify the regulators in a way that will reduce the chances of them starting an investigation internally? Should you notify regulators outside the country? Should you go to the police? When you should go to the police? How can you use the fact that you approach the police in order to gain something inside the incident? When going to the police is good and when it is not that good? How you should work. How do you create trust with the hackers? Which is a very interesting question. Moty has tons of things to say about that. Eventually, you have criminals who stole information from inside, and you want to create some kind of a trust relationship because you want to pay them, and you want to make sure that A, they will not ask more money later, and that B, they will not share your information after you pay them. So this is very, very interesting. How do you create this trust relationship? How do you pay and make sure that they will not publish the information more than that? There are some issues regarding insurance. Not like other insurance policies, with cyber, you have to call the insurance company in real time. So you cannot call them 2 months after the incident, 5 months after the incident, like with a car accident, call them a bit later, or when something bad happened, call them a bit later, telling them this is what happened. You have to call them in real time, and they are your partners, and you have to make sure that you work with them in the right way to make sure that they will pay you. The PR world, how do you work? How do you notify your employees? How do you notify your customers? How do you notify your partners? How do you notify everyone? So those are some of the questions which are not technological by nature that you must ask. And I hope this session today showed the multidisciplinary aspects of a cyber crisis. I'm really honored that you came here. Thank you again, Professor Ben Israel and the ICRC, the Interdisciplinary Cyber Research Center, for organizing this amazing Cyber Week. Thank you, Liron, for helping me so much during the past week organizing this event. Thank you for everyone who participated. Thank you for the moderators. Thank you, guys, and I hope to see you in the rest of the Cyber Week. Have a wonderful day.